Imagine going to a party where no one gets drunk, no fights, no dancing on tables, no regrets the next morning. People are holding drinks, relaxing, talking, but alcohol isn't really doing the work. It sounds like science fiction. But according to scientists, this future may be much closer than we think. Alcohol is quietly losing. Here's something most people don't notice. Adults today drink significantly less alcohol than previous generations. Sociologists have observed this shift across multiple countries. Millennials, roughly those born between the early 1980s and late 1990s, broke the pattern. They drink less, smoke less, exercise more, and care more about long-term health. And this isn't just one country. The same trend appears in Eastern Europe, Western Europe, and the United States. For alcohol producers, this wasn't good news, so the industry adapted. The rise of alcohol without alcohol. When demand changes, markets respond. That's how non-alcoholic beer, wine, and spirits began flooding shelves. Officially, a beverage is considered non-alcoholic or low alcohol if it contains between 0.05 and 1.2% alcohol. In most cases, alcohol is removed after production. Beer and wine usually go through one of three processes. They are heated until alcohol evaporates, filtered through membranes that trap alcohol molecules, or processed using vacuum distillation. Vacuum distillation became the industry standard, and it's been around longer than most people think. 100-year-old technology. In 1908, winemaker Carl Jung pioneered vacuum distillation. The idea is simple. Alcohol normally evaporates at around 78 degrees Celsius, but under vacuum, it evaporates at just 27 degrees. That means alcohol can be removed without destroying flavor. For beer and wine, the problem was mostly solved. But strong alcohol created a new challenge. How do you make whiskey without whiskey? Fake spirits that taste real. The market for alcohol-free spirits is now growing rapidly. Some companies recreate gin by infusing herbs into water or grain spirit, then removing alcohol through distillation. Others went further. One brand introduced the world's first non-alcoholic whiskey, originally designed for people who avoid alcohol for religious reasons. Later came alcohol-free rum, tequila, and vodka, but flavor alone wasn't enough, because people don't drink only for taste. They drink for the effect. Why alcohol feels the way it does. Alcohol affects the brain by interacting with GABA receptors. GABA is the brain's main inhibitory neurotransmitter. When alcohol activates these receptors, we feel relaxed, calmer, and less anxious. But alcohol doesn't target one receptor, it hits all of them at once. That's why relaxation can turn into poor judgment, loss of coordination, and eventually poisoning. This lack of precision is the real danger. And one scientist thought he could fix that. British neuroscientist David Nutt took a different approach. Instead of removing alcohol, he tried to replace it. He developed a synthetic compound designed to activate only one specific GABA receptor in the brain. The result is a molecule that produces relaxation and light euphoria without intoxication, addiction, or hangovers. Unlike alcohol, it cannot push the brain into dangerous states. According to Nutt, this compound could be up to 100 times safer than ethanol. The downside? The taste isn't great, but flavors can fix that. The real obstacle is approval. Why you're still drinking alcohol? The molecule hasn't completed all safety testing yet, but behavior experiments already show something interesting. In 2020, researchers from the University of Bristol ran an online study with 800 regular drinkers. Participants entered a simulated bar. When non-alcoholic options made up a large part of the menu, 49% chose them. When the selection was limited, only 26% did. The conclusion was simple. People don't avoid alcohol-free drinks because they want alcohol. They avoid them because there are fewer alternatives. Drinking without drunkenness. So the secret to drinking without getting drunk isn't self-control. It's chemistry, choice, and design. As safer alternatives improve, alcohol may slowly lose its central role. One day, having a drink might no longer mean intoxication at all, just relaxation, without the cost. Energy drinks don't look dangerous. They're sold next to soda. They don't get you drunk. But neuroscience suggests something unsettling. Regular energy drink use may train the brain toward addiction and push it to crave stronger stimulation over time. Most people see energy drinks as a harmless productivity tool, just caffeine, sugar, and focus, nothing serious. But the brain doesn't care how a stimulant is marketed. It only reacts to chemical signals. Energy drinks deliver stimulation fast, intensely, and repeatedly. And the brain learns from that pattern. This is where the real risk begins. Dopamine is not the pleasure chemical, it's the anticipation chemical. It trains the brain to repeat behaviors that lead to stimulation. Every time caffeine blocks fatigue signals, dopamine reinforces the habit. Over time, the brain starts expecting that boost. Normal energy feels insufficient. This is the first step of dependency, not addiction to a substance, but addiction to stimulation itself. And energy drinks are optimized for exactly that. A cup of coffee can contain as much caffeine as an energy drink. But caffeine amount isn't the whole story. Energy drinks are cold, carbonated, and easy to consume quickly. Carbonation accelerates caffeine absorption. On top of that, they combine caffeine with sugar, guarana, ginseng, and other stimulants. This creates a rapid chemical spike, a fast reward with minimal effort. The brain prefers fast rewards, and it adapts accordingly. The brain always seeks balance. When fatigue signals are blocked repeatedly, the brain produces more of those signals. That means the same drink stops working. 1 can becomes 2, 2 become 3. The effect shortens, the craving grows. This escalation pattern is identical to what neuroscientists observe in early stages of substance dependence. The substance is legal. The mechanism is not harmless. Long-term studies raise serious concerns. Research following young adults over several years found that regular energy drink users had a higher risk of later substance use, including alcohol dependence and illicit drugs. This doesn't mean energy drinks cause drug use directly, but they may lower the brain's threshold for seeking stronger stimulation. The brain gets used to shortcuts, and shortcuts rarely stay small. Energy drinks teach the brain one lesson repeatedly. Fatigue is a problem. Chemistry is the solution. Rest becomes optional. Recovery feels inefficient. This rewires motivation. Instead of listening to exhaustion, the brain learns to override it. That's why people report crashes, anxiety, sleep problems, and difficulty functioning without stimulants. These are not random side effects. They are warning signals. It's because of your video games. Most gamers have heard this line their entire lives. Bad grades, bad mood, bad behavior. Games get blamed for everything. They're accused of making people aggressive, distracted, and antisocial. But when scientists actually studied video games, the results were very different. The aggression myth. Let's start with the biggest fear. Video games are often blamed for rising aggression in society. But history doesn't support that idea. Violence existed long before video games. Entire eras were built on public punishment and warfare, without screens. Modern studies show that moderate gaming does not automatically increase aggression. In most cases, context, personality, and environment matter far more than games themselves. So if games aren't the root of violence, what do they actually change? Yes, games can be addictive. Here's where fear meets reality. Like anything that stimulates the brain's reward system, video games can lead to addiction, if abused. Excessive gaming may cause fatigue, sleep problems, anxiety, and physical discomfort in fingers, hands, or legs. But this isn't unique to games. The key factor is overuse, not the medium itself. Moderation changes everything, and that's where science starts to contradict popular myths. What shooters really do to the brain. Shooter games are often seen as the most dangerous genre, but research suggests something unexpected. Studies led by neuroscientist Daphne Bavelier and psychologists from the University of Toronto found that moderate shooter players learn new sensorimotor skills faster than non-gamers. Reaction speed improves. Visual attention sharpens. One study showed average reaction times dropping from about 200 milliseconds to around 120 milliseconds without loss of accuracy. Faster reactions don't mean worse judgment. They mean faster information processing. And shooters aren't the only genre with benefits. Puzzle games and memory. Let's talk about quest and puzzle games. Researchers at the University of California found that certain 3D games can temporarily improve memory. After 12 weeks of playing Super Mario 3D World, students showed a 12% improvement in episodic and autobiographical memory. The effect didn't last forever, about 6 months, but it was measurable and repeatable. This suggests games can train memory, at least for a period of time. Now let's move to the most complex genre, strategy games and cognitive flexibility. Strategy games demand planning, adaptation, and decision-making. Scientists from Queen Mary University of London and University College London tested this directly. 72 women volunteered for an experiment measuring cognitive flexibility, the ability to switch tasks and adapt to changing conditions. 2 groups played StarCraft. A third group played The Sims. After 6 to 8 weeks, the StarCraft players performed faster and more accurately on cognitive flexibility tests. The conclusion was clear. Strategy games can improve analytical thinking and learning from experience. So what do we have in the end? Video games don't automatically make people aggressive. They don't destroy attention by default. And they don't lower intelligence. When used in moderation, games can improve reaction speed, memory, and problem solving. The real danger isn't games themselves. It's fear replacing evidence. We tend to think of prostitution as something tied to money, crime, and modern cities. But for most of human history, sex wasn't sold the way we imagine today. In many cultures, it was free, ritualized, or even considered sacred. So why did people offer sex without payment, and who actually benefited from that system? The answer is much stranger than it sounds. The oldest profession myth. People often say prostitution is the oldest profession in the world, but that phrase hides an important detail. The word prostitution comes from the Latin prostitutio, meaning to put on public display for sexual use. In modern terms, it means providing sexual services in exchange for money. And here's the key point. Money wasn't always part of the equation. In early societies, sex could serve social, ritual, or biological purposes, not commercial ones. And to understand that, we need to start with hospitality itself, because some of the earliest forms of prostitution had nothing to do with business at all. When hospitality included sex. Here's something that sounds shocking today, but was normal in some ancient cultures. In certain societies, offering a sexual partner to a guest was part of hospitality. Anthropologists call this guest prostitution or hospitality heterism. Among some peoples of the Arctic regions, including areas of the Russian Empire, a host might offer a visitor to share a bed with a woman from the household. No money, no negotiation, just tradition. Researchers believe this practice is a remnant of very old social systems, possibly linked to matriarchal structures and early forms of group marriage, where strict monogamy didn't yet exist. But hospitality wasn't the only reason. There were deeper beliefs behind it: fertility, genes, and survival. One reason guest prostitution existed was spiritual. Many communities believed outsiders carried special life force or fertility. Sex with a foreigner was thought to bring prosperity, healthy children, or good fortune. Another reason was purely biological. Closed communities suffer from inbreeding over time. Introducing outsiders helped diversify genes and produce stronger offspring. From a survival perspective, it made sense. And then there was a third reason that feels especially alien today. In some cultures, including parts of Tibet, it was considered an honor if a guest accepted such an offer. Refusing could be seen as disrespectful. But this still wasn't prostitution as we usually imagine it. That version emerged somewhere else, in temples. Sacred sex and temple prostitution. Now we enter one of the most controversial chapters in history. In many ancient civilizations, sex was linked to religion. This is often called ritual, cult, or temple prostitution. In ancient Sumer, this practice was documented as early as the 18th century BCE in the Code of Hammurabi. There was a clear legal distinction between ordinary sex workers and temple women, known as hierodules. There was a clear legal distinction between ordinary sex workers and temple women known as hierodules, the Babylonian ritual that shocked historians. According to ancient sources, every Babylonian woman was required, once in her life, to visit the temple of the goddess Ishtar. She would sit there until a man threw money into her lap and had sex with her. Some women waited days, others waited years. Greek historians, especially Herodotus, were deeply disturbed by this practice. He described it with open disgust. Here's the irony. Similar rituals existed in ancient Greece itself. Temple prostitution was practiced in the sanctuary of Aphrodite in Corinth and other cities of the Hellenistic world, so the outrage was selective. And this wasn't limited to the Mediterranean, from India to the Americas. In India, temple prostitution survived into the modern era. Women known as Devadasis served in temples as dancers and performers. They often had sexual relationships with men from higher castes. This system was officially banned only in 1988. On the other side of the world, among the Aztecs, both female and male prostitution existed. There was even a deity associated with sex workers. When Spanish conquistadors arrived, they condemned these practices as immoral. Much like accusations of cannibalism and human sacrifice, sexual customs were used to justify conquest and destruction. But moral condemnation didn't stop prostitution. Religion simply changed how it was treated. Christianity, control, and disease. Early Christian thinkers had a surprisingly pragmatic view. Saint Augustine is often quoted as saying that removing prostitutes would lead to chaos in cities. As Christianity spread, prostitution wasn't eliminated. It was tolerated, regulated, and pushed to the margins. Everything changed with one event: the arrival of syphilis from the New World. The disease spread rapidly across Europe and hit the sex trade harder than any law ever could. From that moment on, prostitution became framed as a public threat, not just a moral issue. And that legacy still shapes how societies treat it today. So who benefited and why it was free? So why was prostitution once free? Because it wasn't always a transaction. It was a tool. It served religion, hospitality, population survival, and social stability. Communities benefited, temples benefited, rulers benefited. What we now call prostitution was once embedded in the structure of society itself. Today, countries still can't agree on how to treat it, but they do agree on one thing: exploiting minors is a crime. Everything else remains unresolved. Because what looks like a simple exchange of bodies was never simple at all. It was about power, belief, survival, and who controlled them.